Okay, welcome to the program agenda. You caught me off guard there because I was looking at the headlines, and today is January 8th, 2021. It's a Friday, our first Friday, first weekend, except for the New Year's Day, but the first weekend of 2021. I hope you guys have some nice activities planned to relax this week. But in any case, do join us today as we tackle a number of interesting topics. First of all, if you have been interested about the saliva-based testing for COVID, that's first up on today's agenda with none other than Mr. Joey Concepcion, presidential. I don't want to call him a presidential advisor on entrepreneurship anymore because he's the thinker, the guy, the think tank of creative options, okay? Chairman for creative options. But we'll be speaking with Joey Concepcion regarding the saliva testing, and maybe we will track it because if you recall, it was Joey Concepcion who was first to promote the idea in the Philippines. Although it had come out in the news in other countries, it was Joey Concepcion who first mentioned it here in the Philippines. After Joey, we will speak with Undersecretary Eric Domingo, Director General of the Food and Drug Administration, and I do hope that we will have a nice interview with him with a nice connection because he has been the man of the hour for a couple of weeks. For someone who was quietly doing his job at the FDA, staying below the radar, and just trying to plod along with this COVID-19 pandemic, he has found himself in the middle of a battleground. And let's find out from him what's going on, and especially with three companies all lined up to undergo applying and or have applied for emergency use authorization of their respective vaccine products. Last but not the least, para to sa mga mahilig sa basketball, there is a gentleman who was referred to us by the Dean, Quinito Henson, the Dean of Philippine Basketball and Basketball Journalism, Quinito Henson. He referred to us Mr. Matt Beyer, CEO of the East Asia Super League. It seems that Mr. Beyer has this idea, his plan. Actually, it's more than an idea and a plan. It's actually on the ground already. It has FIBA approval. He wants to put up a super league. I think in our part of the world, allow me to call it Asia for now, where he will bring in top teams from those countries participating, and they will form a super league. And maliit, small time ang presyo, small time. $1 million lang naman eh. $1 million goes to the winning team. I think, I don't want to put words into Mr. Bayer's mouth, but we'll find out from Mr. Beyer later today what his plans are and why we can look forward to his plans, because right now we can barely play basketball. Yung PBA is playing in a bubble. Other companies are trying to figure out how to go about with their sports activities. In fact, if I remember Sergio Ortiz Luis was already saying of the ECOP, saying dapat yung mga athletic activities should be allowed because they employ a lot of people. I guess he misses his golf. In any case, let's take a look at the front page of the Philippine Star. Senators Bato de la Rosa and Francis Tolentino, allies of the president, are pushing for Senate and House to convene and introduce amendments to the 1987 Constitution. Well, just my 10 cents worth or 5 centavos worth, it is interesting that when Malacanang finds itself in a very ticklish situation, kumbaga may mga sabit, there are issues that just won't go away, some of the president's allies come up with these bizarre ideas, such as pushing for constitutional reforms, because I personally think this is another distraction This is something intended to distract all of us from focusing on the COVID-19 vaccine given to the PSG, distract us from the fumbling investigation of the PNP, and the fact that wala pa, wala pa, wala pa tayong vaccine. So that is my 5 centavos worth or analysis of that push for the introduction of amendments to the 1987 Constitution. Meanwhile, in a survey by Pulse Asia, only 32% of Filipinos are willing to receive the vaccine. Siyempre, how can you signify interest to receive a vaccine that is non-existent in the shores of the Philippine Islands? In the United States, chaos ensued at the Capitol in Washington, D.C., as President-elect Joe Biden's victory has been certified because Congress, the U.S. Congress, has to issue a certification that there were enough votes, that he won legally and officially. And what happened there was it was stormed. The U.S. Capitol was stormed by Trump supporters. Okay, and this resulted in 4 dead and dozens arrested in the said mob attack of supporters of Donald Trump. Sinugod po nila yung Kapitolyo ng Amerika, yung Washington, D.C., hoping against hope na mapapara nila yung proclamation. I am sad to say this, but it seems they have become a third world country. They even have a walis tambo. If my team agenda, if our team agenda can just show Captain Walis Tambo. There you go. In the bottom of the screen, you have Captain Walis Tambo. Showing his superpower. In any case, back here in the Philippines, 14 engineers of the Department of Public Works and Highways have been relieved in connection to corruption allegations. Okay. Back to vaccine news, the Food and Drug Administration is set to finish its probe on the PSG vaccination in 20 days. We'll have FDA Director General Eric Domingo to talk about this later on the show. When it comes to the new COVID variant, reduced mobility may be needed to avoid another lockdown, says Okta Research. Actually, ang sinasabi nila, kasi medyo parang conflicting yung dalawang ideas na yun, reduced mobility and lockdown. I think what they're saying is, bawasan muna yung pagbiyahe, yung pag-ikot-ikot, okay? That's mobility. Instead na i-lockdown na yung buong bansa or yung Metro Manila. Okay, and lastly, the Justice Department has taken over the investigation of the death of flight attendant Christine Dacera. Yan na po, no? Kasi ang nangyari doon, the fiscal, the city prosecutor of Makati essentially returned the case or the documents to the Makati City Police and said for further investigation. Ako po, sinabi ko dun sa column ko, for better investigation because they bungled that investigation in their haste, in their rush to declare case solved. Pati yung kanilang chief PNP, the bold Sinas, mukhang hindi na bold ngayon kasi sumabit siya doon. He actually immediately declared case solved. It's a rape with a homicide. Ang nangyayari mukhang even among PNP officials, the decision, the statement or the notion has been challenged. So, ayun po, let's deal with that at a later date. In the meantime, let's move forward to our first guest, Presidential Advisor for Entrepreneurship and lead thinker of Creative Options, Mr. Joey Concepcion. Joey, good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Cito.
Okay, you, to my recollection, are the first person in the Philippines to talk about saliva testing for COVID-19. Now, Apparently, that is not just a thought bubble for Joey Concepcion. It has become a reality. Could you share your knowledge about it and what is the actual status of the matter?
Well, a couple of days ago, the president prefers to be tested using the PCR rather than swab saliva. No, so this research actually started way back last year, sometime even as far back as August, September, when we commissioned the Philippine Society of Pathology, Dr. Raymond Lo, to conduct the pooled PCR testing, which received final approval from DOH, which has issued its DOH memorandum on the proper protocols on how to implement full PCR testing. So basically, it's pools of five. No?
Mm.
Using the gold standard PCR equipments, and the process is swab. Now, since it was successful, Dr. Raymond Lo suggested, and together with us, why don't we look as I mean at the idea of using saliva as the basis rather than swab for PCR testing, uh, which means if you can see, Recos has done similar research already on using saliva for PCR testing, although it's not a formal research done yet. What we intend to do is with the Philippine Society of Pathology, with Dr. Raymond Lo and Dr. Lechones of PCMC, uh, conduct now a formal research officially using saliva now as the base for both pool PCR and individual PCR testing, no? Rather
Mm.
than swab. No? What is the difference? Swab is the thing that you insert in your nose and it's a little bit painful. If that can be eliminated and just using saliva, then you save on swabbers and you save on one equipment, that's the extraction equipment. So there's a savings on equipment. There's a little bit, it will be a little bit faster because you won't go to this extraction machine anymore. And of course, the cost of swabbing is quite high, so that can be eliminated. So that is what we're going to do now. And that should be started. It would have been started during December, but because of all of these delays, we hope to start in the month of January, and hopefully within 2 months or 45 days, the results should come out, and that will be reviewed by DOH again and validated, etc. No?
Mhm. Okay, now who would be the principal supplier of these test kits? Because with the PCR, it was initially China, if I'm not mistaken, and with the saliva test, it seems that it's Israel and America. Is it
No, no,
really?
no, no, no. But let's not mix it up.
Yeah.
The Israel technology is totally different from this. We are using the standard PCR equipment,
Oh, okay.
which is the gold standard. No, there is
Hmm.
no. It's the same test kit that is going to be used, which most of the labs are using, whatever
Hmm.
brand that is, and the same equipments that they're using for the PCR equipments, RT-PCR equipments, which is the gold standard. Now that's what
Hmm.
DOH is using. What we are just possibly changing is rather than swabbing the person through
Yeah.
his nose and his throat, is saliva, getting the saliva, and then
Okay.
spitting it out.
Yeah.
Uh, that there is also something similar with antigen. No? They have a saliva antigen right now. So
Mm.
when we do this research on saliva being the basis for PCR, we will also run parallel this antigen test kit that arrived, uh, but instead of swab on antigen, it's also going to be saliva. In other words, the basis for collecting samples will not be through the nose, no
Hmm.
swabbing, but will
Okay.
be through the saliva, no.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that because I'm still locked in on our last conversation about the Israeli product or test kit where you actually gargle and spit into a tube and then you do a test. But in this case, we're using the PCR laboratories, the PCR test kits, but no
Everything.
longer scraping the nasal cavity or the back of the throat. You are simply just going to get saliva.
That's right. That's right. The Israel technology, they're still here. They're trying to get their trials going. I think they have made some progress. But then again, the challenge really there is that while some countries are using that equipment already, the gold standard so far has been set all over our different provinces as
Mm-hmm.
PCR. For
Mm-hmm.
them to change that into the Israel technology is going to be will take some considerable time. No? So I was telling the people who bring the Israel technology here, you may have to use that for a different purpose. It may have to be classified close to an antigen. No? So
Mm-hmm.
antigen test kits are being used because you get instant results. No? But
Mm-hmm.
then again, you may have false negatives there, like
Yeah.
common. But it all balances out. No, I mean, in the end, you want always to get the confirmatory with PCR. So I mean, even PCR, you can also have false positives and false negatives, but it's much less, no doubt about that. No?
Okay, is the part of the resistance to using the Israeli type saliva test based on the fact that a lot of local governments invested millions upon millions of pesos to put up their laboratories, and if we introduce a new technology, all of that money will simply go down the drain?
No, from the way I look at the Israel technology, the advantage of that will be similar to the antigen. It will be a
Mm-hmm.
quick response. No,
Yeah.
you get a rapid response. So antigen within 15 minutes. Same
Mm-hmm.
thing with the Israel technology. But I believe that Israel technology, there are two groups using that same one, technology. One of them already is not pursuing it. No, so there
Mm-hmm.
is only one group now that's pursuing it. But I think, Cito,
Yeah.
the mindset right now is while testing will be predominant and very important and social distancing in this 2021, the focus really now is shifting towards supply of vaccines, no? Because
Mm-hmm.
that's the
Correct.
ultimate solution. I mean, all what we're doing right now with all the testing and social distancing and mask and all of that is how to coexist with the virus. But it will always be there because it does not kill the virus. So
Mm-hmm.
what will kill the virus is the cure, which is the vaccine. So we are still uh, pushing hard on testing because you will need that for maybe 2021, 2022, and moving forward, no? Because not everybody will be able to take the vaccines
Yeah.
depending on supply. No?
Joey, what's puzzling for many is because, like, you spearheaded the private sector move to fund the purchase of vaccines, even partnering with the government. But what remains puzzling is how come we don't have a single official dose of vaccine on the ground, and we haven't started because you guys in the private sector have put out a lot of money. I think what a billion or something. I don't know. I don't want to exaggerate. I don't really know how much money you guys in the private sector forked over. But how come we haven't started vaccination? Not even in the private sector.
Well, I think everybody must understand, no, that the wealthier countries have the money to pay even a premium to acquire these vaccines, such as Pfizer and Moderna. They have the
Mm-hmm.
ability to put a down payment, no, and
Mm-hmm.
take a risk. This is what the private sector did. No,
Mm-hmm.
government cannot do it because our laws prevent us from purchasing vaccines that are not FDA approved. But in a case of what we see today, if you want access to these vaccines, you have to pay and take that risk. So private sector forged an agreement with the government and AstraZeneca, which we call a tripartite agreement,
Yeah.
whereby we take the risk. We put down the risk money. We
Yeah.
could have lost it all. I mean, but gladly that the UK gave MHRA approval to AstraZeneca, which was great,
Mm-hmm.
which now paves the way that our down payment will not get lost. So it's intact. So
Mhm.
now these vaccines are scheduled to arrive still in May and onward. Unlike Pfizer and Moderna, they were already first. I mean, they were one of the first. They're using a different technology. Doesn't mean that theirs is a better technology, but they were funded. They were first, and these are U.S. companies, and they were approved by the FDA in U.S. now. So they were approved for emergency use. But there are other vaccines already out there. No, I'm ready to go. And Astra is now going to produce it in India, in Thailand, and the Philippines will be taking its source from Thailand. No? So
Mhm.
as of late, next week we hope to sign with again Secretary Galvez, Ambassador Cruz, and the new component here is LGUs now are part of this tripartite agreement. No? So the
Mhm.
private sector has its own arrangement with the national government, and the LGUs have its arrangement with the national government. And in fairness to the president, he approved the use that LGUs can now purchase the vaccines. And also, in fairness to Secretary Galvez, despite the handicap following our rules and regulations, they
Mhm.
found ways and means on how to get LGUs to purchase the vaccines. No? So they are all within the Philippine laws. No? So
Yeah.
uh, that's basically where we are right now.
Has has anyone among your circle of power, allow me to use that, among the circle of power, has anyone called on the Speaker of the House, the Senate President, to address this problem? Because we are in a pandemic, it's an abnormal situation. One would imagine that the Congress would be the first to say, hey guys, if you have problems with the laws, we can revise or we can issue emergency legislation. Because this isn't the first time I've heard that our laws prevent our leaders from taking decisive action.
Yeah, well, that has not been done. But actually, there's also a risk when you do that. No, for example,
Mhm.
when you bet on an invention that's not yet there, and if it fails, and that's billions, in the end, it can hit you. No, so not
Mhm.
all countries are capable of doing that, depending on the resources. Wealthier countries maybe can do that and take that risk, but the Philippines, we have to take a calculated risk. I think there
Mhm.
should be some level of protection. In fairness, the president signed EO 101, which grants emergency use of the vaccines that have approval from the respective countries. So, in the case of AstraZeneca, which it got it before New Year,
Mhm.
uh, within 3 weeks, Director Domingo will definitely approve that for Philippine use. No? But prior to that, if the Philippine government took that risk, and it's a big risk, and something went wrong, then that's the public money. So
Mhm.
it's yes, today is an exception, but there could be many vaccine makers there who can come out and claim that it's going to work. Then it doesn't work. Then billions are lost, and that's a lot. No, so the whole process is that the moment the country has FDA approval, I think mere fact that the president signed EO 101 hastens the approval of our own FDA to implement it right away, no? And that's what happened. But of course, yung mga ibang countries na mas mayaman will take that risk, no? And
Yeah.
not all countries will do that, no?
Okay, Joey, do you have any idea, guesstimate, ballpark, when we will actually have vaccines being injected to Filipinos? Because some people are now saying 2022.
No, I don't think so. We will definitely have it on May moving forward. The
Mhm.
quantity is hopefully will be we're not it's the quantity will build up over time because even in the private sector we had a part two, no, and it was pretty successful. So we will have more than double the quantity ordered, no? And I'm glad that LGUs now have been allowed by the president to purchase the vaccines, so that will also help, no. So Secretary Galvez is finding ways and means to make it all work. No, it's a very challenging environment right now because the demand for vaccines are high. I mean, the the countries that made a huge bet and put a lot of money have definitely priority to this access. That's why you see America vaccinating now. These are two companies owned by America, so they have and they've secured that way before Europe and the rest. And so we have to still also do our part. No?
Yeah.
And for the private sector, I mean, we're actually buying the whole vaccine, donating the entire amount to the government, and the government giving us one half of that, no, for our own employees, which is a good formula. Whereas the LGUs, they're just allowed to purchase, which is good because then now they can help their constituents. So I think this formula of a tripartite agreement is the right formula moving forward. Now we have to find more sources, be it China, be it India, be it Moderna, Pfizer. We just have to find all of these other vaccines and try to really put more pressure. But again, it's supply and demand. The
Okay.
demand is so huge right now.
Okay, well, thank you for that clarification and information, Joey, because at least May sounds great, very promising, and not too far because even the Netherlands, who came in late in Europe, started vaccinating this week. So January, February, March, April, May, we're not too far off. Thank you very much, Mr. Joey Concepcion, for your inputs today.
Thank you, Cito.
Okay, that's Presidential Advisor for Entrepreneurship and Radical Thinking, Mr. Joey Concepcion. Ako na po yung nagdagdag ng radical thinking kasi yan naman, maganda, no? Apparently, we are no longer talking about the saliva test kits where you gargle or you get your saliva and you spit into a tube, into a vial, and you shake it and then put it on a test strip. Hindi na po yun ang sinasabi pala. Ang pinag-uusapan dito, they will still use, gagamitin pa rin yung RT-PCR test process, pero imbis na sinusundot yung kanal ng ilong nyo o yung ngalangalan ninyo o yung likuran ng lalamunan, instead of the cavities being probed and scraped, they will now just concentrate on saliva samples, but using the RT-PCR testing. So it will probably still take the same number of hours. From what I remember, 4 hours is the fastest to maybe 12 hours or overnight. But at least the accuracy is higher than this supposed fast testing kits. Yung saliva, yung Israeli type saliva test kits, I think they will come in handy for yung mga mga stranded people who are returning to the province, tourists, etc. Let's go for a quick break, and when we return, we will then speak with Undersecretary Eric Domingo, Director General of the Food and Drug Administration, here on Agenda. Welcome back to the program agenda. I'm your host, Cito Beltran, and you are viewing us via Signal TV, channels 8, or on to channel 250 for high definition. You can also watch us on facebook.com/OneNewsPH. Now, let's go to our next guest. He is the Director General, Food and Drug Administration of the Philippines. He is also an Undersecretary at the Department of Health. Let's bring in USEC Eric Domingo. Sir, good morning.
Hi, good morning, Cito. Good morning, everybody.
I am glad to see that you are able to smile after all the headaches that you have been exposed to. Naawa na ako sa'yo.
Well, you just have to work through everything and do what you have to do.
Okay, well, I'm glad that you have that attitude, and I do not envy your position because put away all the, issues, the politics. You still have a ton of concerns, and I think the primary concern you have before you are the top three or the most popular names for vaccines have lined up at your door. You have Pfizer, you have AstraZeneca, and I think now you also have Sinopharm trying to get into the line for approval of emergency authorization or emergency use authorization for their vaccines. What's our situation, Yusek?
Well, no, officially, I have a submission from Pfizer, which happened right, Christmas Eve. So we worked through Christmas and New Year's holidays through that, and we're at the end, of the evaluations for that. They finally gave some answers to the last questions we had yesterday. So our evaluators and our experts are looking into that, and the recommendations are coming very soon. So I hope to finish with that evaluation by early next week. And then AstraZeneca formally submitted their application Wednesday, if I'm not mistaken, or Tuesday afternoon. So that one, we already sent that to our evaluators also, and we're checking that. Sinopharm, no, on the contrary, no, Sinopharm, we've had no communication with Sinopharm. So far, Sinopharm is not, we have no indication that they will submit soon. I know that what we'll submit soon is probably, I'm just waiting for the completion of submissions of Sputnik from Gamaleya Institute in Russia. And Sinovac has already asked us for the requirements and the procedure. No? So I think Sinovac will be applying quite soon also.
Okay, Sinovac. Okay, now the question here is what are the requirements, the fundamental requirements? Because nagiging issue itong trials, yung mga testing or trials. You have to forgive me. I'm not too familiar with the scientific terminology, but I know that I think Pfizer have done their trials abroad. AstraZeneca, I think, have done their trials abroad. But wala na kaming alam na iba pang nag-trials. Is this a fundamental requirement na if you don't have those trials, you're not going to get approved?
No. So when a vaccine comes in with an emergency use approval from either the home country or some other regulatory agency like FDA, there are two things that we look for. Number one is the quality of the product. So we have our regulators looking into that to make sure, for example, that even if it's approved in the US FDA, we have to make sure that the product they're applying for here is the same product that was approved. No, it has to have the same quality seal. It has to have the same certificate of good manufacturing practice, and we check for the stability of the product when it comes here. And they will have to tell us how they will handle it, how they will manage any risks that will happen along the way. So very particular yan to the Philippines. So hindi naman pwedeng stampad lang na approved na porque approved na sa US FDA. Kailangan, we have to put it in the Philippine context and how it will arrive here and assure that will be assured of the same quality of the same product.
Okay,
and
so
at the same time,
go ahead.
so the other half would be the evaluation of the safety and efficacy. So when the safety and efficacy, dito papasok yung mga clinical trial results ito. No? So they do have clinical trial results worldwide. And these have been published and ito yung sinabit nila, for example, sa US FDA. But what I'm asking for is, can you please segregate the data if you have any people who are Filipinos, Asians, Pacific Islanders, people who are racially and ethnically similar to us. So that I will be able to see if the effect of the vaccine is not very different from the whole population in general. So kahit na hindi naman ginawa yung clinical trial dito, if they can show to us that it's also safe and effective for people who are racially similar to us, then that is enough for us to make a decision upon.
Yeah, that's not the first time I've heard ethnicity become a factor in the assessment. Why is that? Is there really a big difference in ethnicity and vaccines? Kasi parang we always assume a vaccine is good for a white man, a black man, and a brown man.
Yeah. Well, sa vaccines actually hindi masyado, no. Wala pa tayong there's no vaccine naman that has been proven to have a wide different effects in racial different people. But some medicines definitely do have racial differences. For example, anti-tuberculosis medicines, no.
Yeah.
Asians can metabolize this much faster than Caucasians. So the dosage is different, the schedule is different. No? There are, of course, genetically yung makeup natin, yung metabolism natin, meron kasi talagang differences. And you know what, we just want to make sure that for this case, na walang difference, that it's going to be useful also. Because you have to remember, these are really very new vaccines and we don't know much about them except for a 6-month history of use in a clinical trial and now beginning roll out of the population. So we just have to take more care.
Okay, that's good to know. Now, the question is, how soon will the FDA be giving approval for the emergency use authorization? Because if you heard my interview with Joey Concepcion, he seemed very confident that in 3 weeks you're going to sign the approval for AstraZeneca. And mahirap magsalitang tapos dito sa mundon to eh. Is that accurate? In 3 weeks, AstraZeneca is going to get their emergency use authorization?
You know, that's also within my my own time frame. No, I think Pfizer, I will be finishing up with that this week and then writing it up and then probably issuing something next week. And then yung AstraZeneca, we started already evaluating it. And AstraZeneca kasi actually sent a lot of information on their trials already, no? Kasi nung una gustong mag-clinical trial dito niyan eh. So yung preliminary data nila nandito na sa atin eh. Unlike Pfizer, yung Pfizer nung nag-apply sila ng EUA, doon pa lang nag-submit yan ng data. So medyo mabilis yang sa AstraZeneca na evaluation. What will take a few days is really writing down the conditions of the authorization to make it more appropriate for the Philippine situation. Yung conditions kasi na doon nakalagay yung kung paano mo siya i-handle and how it will be distributed.
Okay, in terms of safeguards, I'm sure you've been monitoring isolated cases of allergies. Kasi may nabalitaan nga ako sa Holland, sa Netherlands. Nabalitaan ko there was an isolated incident na nag-react mga ilang pasyente. Yung pala, yung dose for 5 binigay sa isa na nagkamali ng application yung nagbibigay ng vaccine, so na-overdose yung initial group, pero hindi naman daw masama. There was no real adverse effect. But what safeguards are we going to do if you suddenly hear of an allergy, a reaction? Does that mean immediately stop muna or observe?
Okay. So, yun yung advantage natin din naman, Cito, na hindi tayo yung nauna. No? So, when Pfizer and AstraZeneca come applying to me now, I ask them, what happened when you rolled it out in the other countries? Did you see any unusual reactions? So, like itong allergies na to, it will now be part of what we're going to watch out for. Hindi katulad nung umpisa nila sa US, hindi nila alam na merong ganyan na severe allergic reaction. So, ngayon, nakahanda na tayo. So, part and parcel of rolling out a vaccination program using a new vaccine. In this case, a vaccine under emergency use authorization. No? So, hindi pa complete ang clinical trials nito. Talagang kasama niyan, required ang close monitoring. You have to have close monitoring of the DOH and FDA, and the drug company will also be monitoring. So that if we have any severe adverse events, they have to be reported within 24 hours. A panel will take a look if it is serious enough to stop the vaccination, or to at least find out if it's connected to the vaccination, to the receiving the vaccine. And then you can make a decision. The FDA and the Department of Health can make a decision if we need to stop it right now or pause it muna while we're investigating. So with this one, this system, we're also putting this in place to make sure that when we roll out, that's going to be very, very close and very quick surveillance and monitoring of all people who will receive the vaccine.
Okay, the pandemic and the urgent need for vaccines and all sorts of medicines have obviously changed the terms of engagement between the FDA and pharmaceutical companies. How has all of this affected how FDA does its how do you call it, its screening process? Kasi sa mga nakakausap ko in the past, sinasabi na napakahigpit ng FDA ng Pilipinas, na if they bring a medicine into the Philippines, it takes anywhere from 6 months to 2 years minimum to get approval, because you really have to go, you go with a fine tooth comb, sinusuyod ninyo. Ay ngayon parang naiba lahat, and I remember you saying the other day, for compassionate reasons or for emergency, certain requirements can be eased. How has all of this affected the policy of the FDA?
Yeah, talagang if you're going to get a certificate of product registration or a marketing authorization for a new product, it takes a few months, 3 to 6 months talaga yan. But now that we're in an emergent situation, this is not our usual everyday operation. We've had some relaxing and some flexibility in the way that we regulate to make sure that people have access to drugs that are investigational or still under development, because knowing that there's no proven drug or vaccine yet for COVID-19. So nag-allow tayo, for example, dati yung compassionate use permit, ginagamit lang yan for HIV and cancer. Mga gamot na available overseas tas hindi nagre-register dito, pwede nila bring in for compassionate use. But we've expanded that to include investigational drugs and medicines and vaccines for COVID-19. Ibig sabihin, kung talagang wala nang maibigay, we gave access, for example, to remdesivir, which is not registered here in our country. Pero kung talagang pasyente grabe na sa ospital, pwede na silang humingi ng compassionate use permit sa atin. And then second would be the emergency use authorization. Until now, there was no such thing as an emergency use authorization in the Philippines. We had to ask for an executive order from the president, which he granted on December 1, to give the FDA the authority to give an EUA. Ang emergency use authorization is not a marketing authorization. No, it's not a CPR. It means that we're allowing the use of a vaccine that is still under development, but only when the special conditions are present. Number one, the pandemic is still happening. And then number two, with the available data at hand at this time, we can say that the benefit outweighs the risk of using this vaccine. So kahit na tuloy-tuloy pa yung development nito and it's still within the clinical trial phase 3, if we can see that the benefit outweighs any present or potential risk, then we can give the government the authorization to use this product. Kaya lang, mas mapapabilis din kasi mas konti syempre yung requirements natin.
Okay, now I have to be totally transparent, Yusek Eric, because you touched a very sensitive button in my life right now when you mentioned the word cancer. Kasi nagka-breast cancer yung sister ko, si Marisa, and so we're like looking at medicines, the cost of medicines, etc. Given the reality of cancer in the Philippines, I have heard from so many people na sobrang mahal talaga ng cancer medicine and sobrang higpit ng FDA. Is your strictness or your stringent rules creating a added cost to the cost of the products? I mean, para lang maliwanagan, well, I'm not making any conclusions. Is the processing of these medicines entailing such big cost to drive up the cost of medicines?
No, no, there's no additional cost to applying to FDA. Minimum
Mhm.
naman ang requirement namin ng cost. And as long as the submissions are complete early on, madali
Mhm.
namang mas mabilis talaga. Ang mahirap kasi pag nag-apply sila tapos hindi pa kumpleto tapos isa-isang magsasubmit and then we have to keep going back and forth. That does
Mhm.
take a little longer. And I have to admit naman, there's really a backlog at the Center for Drug Regulation and Research. Nung dumating ako dyan, Cito, I think a year ago, the backlog was about 18,000 pharmaceutical
Mhm.
products that were waiting, no? And application. Now we're down to a backlog, I think, of about 11,000. And hopefully by this year, maubos na natin yan. Kasi gusto talaga natin maging medyo responsive and quick yung registration process. And so that by 2020, by the end of 2021 and 22, we can stick to the acceptable timelines.
What are you also quick and responsive to private patients? And I'm not speaking for my sister, no, for other patients who may want to opt to ask their relatives abroad to buy their medicines, and mahirap pa kasi natatanda ko
Yes,
nagpadala lang ako ng shampoo sa anak ko na human nature, eh. Yung gawa dito sa Pilipinas naharang doon sa sa cargo dahil sabi hindi kailangan ng FDA approval or permit.
lahat ng products need no FDA approval or permits. Either pagpunta sa Amerika, huhulihin ka kung di ka registered sa FDA doon, dito rin
Mhm.
sa atin. But of course, for personal use naman, we're not that strict. You can
Mhm.
come in with a bottle of vitamins that you bought from the US. If it's for personal use, we're not very strict with that. For mga patients who have particular requirements, meron naman
Mhm.
talagang gamot kasi na hindi available dito. That
Mhm.
one, you just email a request and then a prescription from your doctor and then a description, and we give the permit for up to 1 year supply. Hindi yan
Mm.
katulad ng CPR or ng authorization. No? Ito mabilis lang to, and for compassionate permits, we usually respond and give the permits within 48 hours.
Okay, so within 48 hours yan, Yusek, testingin ko yan. Magpapabili akong vitamins para sa manok ko. I'm just teasing you. But Yusek, medyo pagbigyan mo na lang, no, kasi yung aming news group ay nagre-request for information regarding your investigation sa PSG. Kasi sinabi nyo raw tuloy pa rin yung investigation and you will be concluding. Ano na ba yung status niyan?
Well, yung investigation naman natin, not just on the PC, but on all of the reports, di ba, of this vaccination going in Binondo, in
Mm.
Makati, and then of course si Tessie Alpi saying that the Pogo workers have been vaccinated. So what I directed our enforcement unit is really to make a complete investigation on the reports of unauthorized vaccines coming in to the country and being used here. Ang namin, yung mga lawyers namin, sabi nila sa akin, they will be able to give me a report. Kaya lang, 21 days. So I'm still
Mm.
waiting for that. But until now, they are contacting, of course, and asking for help from NBI and the Bureau of Customs, and going around and checking out all the leads.
Okay, kasi ang isang the primary question in many people's minds, paano nakalusot 'yon sa sa customs, sa airport? Presumably it's through the airport kasi hindi mo naman pwedeng padala yan ng barko, baka pagdating niyan dito lusaw na yan. So the question is how it got through the airport. Was it brought in through a diplomatic pouch?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, I cannot answer that for you, Sito. That's the same question in my mind. Kasi kami minsan, as you said, no, magdala ka lang ng 10 shampoo, hihingan ka pa ng
Oh,
FDA clearance.
oh.
And we have an office that gives clearances and import permits for registered products. And like I said, wala pa naman kaming binibigay na permit for any COVID-19 vaccine in the country. So it's
Mhm.
really, we're also wondering how it got in.
Okay, meron na ba raw kayong idea, and sorry Yusek, I have to ask this question. Do you have any idea what brand of vaccine was used by the PSG? Kasi siyempre, kailangan lumabas yun na hindi naman natin madi-deny na nagpabakuna sila. Ang tanong, anong brand ng bakuna raw? Meron na ba kayong idea?
Wala pa din eh. Wala pa rin report ano. I'm waiting for the full report.
Okay.
I do not have any information yet.
Okay. Last question ko. When you were asked by the president if you could issue a emergency use authorization based on for the PSG, you responded by saying it can be done on the compassionate use law or principle. Now, there were people who said, well, if you can be compassionate with the PSG, why can we not be compassionate with the 105 million Filipinos? Kumbaga, parang sinasabi nila, if it's good for them, it should be good for all of us. Kayo na sumagot. Mahirap.
Yung compassionate use permit, we can give it to anybody who needs it. But you have to understand, it has very particular requirements. No? For example, you need a compassionate permit for patients with COVID. The hospital director will write me and tell me, okay, this is the list of patients that I will give it to, and this is the amount of vaccine that I want. I take full responsibility for it, and then this is the registration of the vaccine from the country where it came from. And then I will report to you each and every patient that was given to what happened. So sinabi ko nito ng president, go for a small group, no? And if it's justified, you can give special permits for this kasi very well controlled eh. Pag binigyan ko ng import permit, for example, sa customs, nakalagay doon, 100 doses coming from this company, this batch number, this lot number, to be used by the hospital on these people. And then they report to me. Eh pag 100 million na, mahirap. Wala na sigurong gagawa na mag-a-apply sa akin ng compassionate permit for 100 million na ililista lahat ng 100 million na bibigyan niya tapos i-report niya lahat sa akin. So pag malakihan na po at saka talagang vaccination program na, emergency use authorization na ang kailangan i-apply. So compassionate special permit is used by individual patients or patients, for example, within a hospital or a unit na kayang makontrol at kaya nilang ma-report lahat.
Ayun. So, well, I guess the important point that you mentioned is a special purpose. Kasi yung sa PSG, special purpose is to protect themselves from infecting the president. And then also, pakalimutan ko na, nasisinto-sinto ako ngayong umaga. Ang hirap pag Biyernes, nalolobat na. Anyway, Yusek, aside from all of this regarding vaccines, ano ba ang mga primary concerns ngayon ng FDA? How are you guys doing? Kasi you are really under the gun in terms of processing so much material and getting a lot of stuff done. Does the FDA still enjoy substantial funding and personnel complement, or parang kasi in the past sinasabi skeleton force lang daw yung FDA na yan eh.
Well, ngayon naman nag-expand na no since last year we've hired 100 more people, and then we're with the new budget we've been approved a plantilla of another 77. So that will increase no the number of evaluators. Yung enforcement unit namin yun ang medyo talagang nahirapan, I mean, people expect us kasi to catch everybody who's selling all of these illegal things, no? But we only have about 100 enforcers and inspectors. Tapos nag-inspect pa yan ng mga factory, ng mga butika, at the same time nag-check pa ng mga illegal things going on. So we really have to work with NBI, the police, and the LGUs. And we really need the help of the public on this, no? I mean, dapat po tayo rin naman as consumers, we have to help enforce the law and protect ourselves. Hindi po kasi namin talaga mahuli lahat ng bawat isang nagbebenta ng illegal products or fake products without the help of the public and the local government unit especially.
Okay, so is it safe? Kasi may nadinig ako ang comment ng isang doktor. Sabi niya, Cito, the medicines in the Philippines, 30%. If I'm not mistaken, sabi niya, 30% in the market are fake. And ako, from personal experience, na-experience ko naman na makabili ng fake na gamot para sa LBM sa tindahan. Inutusan ko lang yung aming tao. Sabi ko, pakibilin nyo nga ako at mukhang may nakain ako ng masama. Imbis na gumaling ako, lumala pa yung condition ko. And that's when I realized, I must have bought fake medicine. Now, the thing is, on one hand, I know that the branded or recognized pharmacies and drugstores are really strict on requiring prescription, really know what they're talking about when you ask them about medicines. Pero itong pagbebenta ng mga gamot sa tindahan, yung mga paracetamol, yung mga painkiller, at saka yung para sa LBM, patuloy pa rin ba yan, or is the FDA going to, or is FDA trying to put a stop to that?
Meron pa rin, may mga nahuhuli pa rin kami, no? And talagang if you buy drugs from not a licensed drug retailer, then you will expect to get fake or substandard medicines, no? But when you go, for example, to a licensed drugstore, walang makikili dyan na fake kasi required sila to check the license of their supplier, to check the CPR of the product that they're carrying. Because if I get a drugstore and find them selling counterfeit or fake products, they can lose their license, no? So yun naman po ang pakiusap namin. Kung bibili kayo ng gamot, sa butika kayo bibili, hindi po sa sari-sari store, no? Hindi po sa palengke na nakalagay sa tao. Talagang may fake. Definitely not 30%. And in licensed retail drugstores, wala po tayong makikita fake.
Okay, hayaan mo, papagalitan ko ulit yung aming napag-utusan. Ewan ko kung bakit sa tindahan bumili ng gamot ko. Siguro galit sa akin. Pero yung going back quickly lang, last minute na natin, Yusek, yung doon sa sinabing fake drugs in the market, how many percent would you say is the prevalence of fake drugs sa merkado?
We do catch fake drugs every day halos. Last year, if I'm not mistaken, we were able to confiscate about 50-60 million pesos worth of fake drugs, no? Nakikita nga natin to usually sa mga palengke, sa sari-sari store, to 10% to 20% of mga nandiyan sa mga illegal outlets. And ang paborito nilang fake yung mga common brands, the popular brands. They don't fake generic medicines. They fake more popular brands na binibili talaga ng mga tao.
So, popular brands na for paracetamol o pati yung mga cough syrup o ano ba yung mga delikadong binibili sa mga palengke, sari-sari?
For paracetamol, for example, mga nahuhuli natin dyan, yung may brand talaga, Biogesic, Alaxan, yung mga mabenta. Yun ang gusto nila. Kasi they won't, hindi sila kikita doon sa kung generic yung gagayahin. Tapos generic na alam nilang mura na to begin with, no? So usually they get the branded ones. And you have to remember that these very big companies, for example, who manufacture these branded products that are very popular, will not sell to an unlicensed retailer. Hindi naman magbebenta yan sa palengke. Sa butika lang po nagbebenta yan. Kaya magduda na kayo pag nakita kayo na nagbebenta sa tindahan. Lalo na yung mga brand natin.
Okay, very good closing statement, Yusek, para dun sa mga nanonood. Thank you very much for your information, and I really sincerely wish you all the best, good health, and I pray to God that you have a better year in 2021. May the Lord restore you, restore your spirit, your heart, and everything you do be blessed. Thank you very much, Yusek.
Thank you, Cito.
Okay, that's Undersecretary Eric Domingo, Director General of the Food and Drug Administration. So, mapoprocess na yung Pfizer in maybe 10 days. Mapoprocess na yung AstraZeneca in 3 weeks, confirming what Joey Concepcion mentioned. And then, naliwanagan na kayo, tuloy pa rin yung investigation just sa PSG, yung kanilang vaccine. And, let's shift the focus from the PSG to the supplier of the vaccine, to the kind of vaccine, and how the vaccine came in. Kasi alam nyo po, kung kayo ay magbababoy, naintindihan nyo ibig ko sabihin. Kanya marami sa amin na todas ang negosyo, na todas ang babuyan, ay dahil sa pagpasok ng mga bagay-bagay na hindi dapat nakapasok. We have a lot of diseases in the country, diseases of dogs, diseases in chickens, diseases in people, na it came here from a foreign source. Bakit? Kasi nakalusot po. And that's what the FDA investigation should focus on, and we hope it brings results. Okay, we'll go for a break. When we return, palagay ko, usapang basketball naman tayo, and we hope that you will stay tuned and stick with us after the break. Okay, you're back here on Agenda, and I'm your host, Cito Beltran, from COVID-19 concerns, from FDA concerns. Let's now go to athletics, to the world of basketball. Our friend, the Dean of Basketball, Kinito Henson, contacted me recently and said, hey, would you like to interview a friend of mine? And who can say no to Kinito Henson? But more importantly, who was this friend? And this friend of Kinito Henson happens to be Matt Beyer, and he is the CEO of East Asia Super League. And if you haven't heard of East Asia Super League, he's basically founder. He's forming together. You know what? Let's just bring in Matt Beyer and let him explain. What, Matt? Good morning to you.
Good morning, Cito. Good morning, everyone. I hope that everyone is having a happy new year, and we collectively, as a human race in the sport of basketball, definitely have hopefully a better 2021 to look forward to.
You know, when the camera opened up on you, I was kind of surprised because I was expecting a seniorly CEO, more of my age and Kinito's age, and you don't look like anything over 30. So what's a guy like you doing in this part of the world trying to put up a basketball super league? Can you tell us what exactly are you doing in this part of the world, and what are you trying to achieve?
Thank you for the compliment. I would say it's almost 20 years of the Asian diet that have definitely helped with some of this. But I have been so I moved to China from the U.S. I'm originally from Wisconsin in the U.S. and my family adopted 2 kids from China in the mid '90s, and I was always very curious about where my brother and sister from. So after high school, I moved and started my university path in China, and then I had the opportunity in 2007 to be working for the number 6 draft pick in the NBA draft, Yi Jianlian from China, and as his personal interpreter. And that's really where I got into the sport of basketball, then became a player agent. And then in 2015 was looking for what was next and what would the Asian basketball ecosystem really need, which is a strong club-to-club competition that allows the top leagues in Asia to meet each other in a Champions League type of format.
Are you one of those who are convinced that everything is going to be Asia in the next 10 or 20 years? Because, you know, everyone in business was saying business has to go to Asia. And now you've talked about superstars in the NBA coming from China. Are you convinced that basketball is going to shift to Asia?
Absolutely. I mean, it's if you look right now at the different FIBA team national rankings, if you're looking at the teams in East Asia, including Gilas, you know, everyone is sort of hovering around 30th in the world right now, and there's a huge potential to grow. As there's more international competition, better coaching, more exposure for Asian players to be playing in NBA Development League or the NBA, or in Europe in the FIBA Champions League or Euro League. Like there's a ton of opportunities for the sport to grow and for Asian players to have a presence globally. But you know, if you look at the economies in Asia, of course, like you have to have successful economies to be supporting the growth of the sport, and that's what we really see is like the potential for growth and the uncaptured growth in basketball is definitely centered in East Asia, and so that's why we're here.
Okay, so you've gone from interpreter for an NBA player to a player agent. And now you're forming basketball leagues, and not just basketball leagues, super leagues. I mean, I don't know if I'm just awed or you know, impressed by you know, the price of $1 million for you know, for a prize, and bonuses of $20,000 for appearance, etc. Can you talk about this super league, or is it what do you call this? East Asia Super League.
Yeah, sure. So the format is quite simple. So we start with season 1 with 8 teams, which are representatives of the Philippines, from the PBA, from Japan B League, Korea KBL, and 2 representatives from Greater China. So that include China and Chinese Taipei or Taiwan. And then they're going to play together. These are the teams that are ranked highest in their own domestic leagues. Then they qualify into East Asia Super League from the rankings of their previous season. And we play home and away in group stages. So there's 8 teams. They go into 2 groups of 4. And the 2 groups of 4, then the top 2 ranked teams of those play in a Final Four at the end of the season. So the Final Four is a city that rotates on an annual basis. And what they're playing for is a big prize. So the winner of East Asia Super League Final Four will receive $1 million US in cash. Number 2, 500,000, and number 3, $250,000. And so what we want to do is we want to help to expand the brand of the PBA and of the other Asian leagues across the region, and also to be elevating the brands of the players across the region, at the same time bringing new revenue streams to the leagues, and for ourselves as a company, putting together a great product, which is valuable media rights and valuable sponsorship rights. So that's really what East Asia Super League is about.
Okay, but what has been the response of the league, of the teams, and the national leagues per se? Because you want to get the top teams of those countries, and they are the top commercial teams, if I'm not mistaken.
That's
So
correct.
this is going to be like an commercial Asian Games.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, the thing is that what I noticed, like from when I was still in university in China and then was traveling more around Asia, is that the fans around the region get very excited when there's international competition. I mean, much more so than the commercial leagues. So what we're looking to do is to be able to take that passion of the fans that they have for their national team competition, and then use that in a different format, which then elevates the level of the commercial leagues. Because historically, there really hasn't been much exchange between the Asian leagues together. They're all very mature, but it's all very siloed in its own system. So, to really, if you look at all of the markets in Asia, there's the NBA, which is extremely popular. Then there's the domestic leagues, which are in varying levels of popularity. Then there's the national team, but there's no real third solution. But if you look at like the sport of soccer, football, for example, you have 5 successful leagues in Europe. You have national teams. You have FIFA World Cup, etc. There's just so much more content. So what we're doing is adding, I guess, aside from NBA and a domestic league, a third choice for the fans.
Okay, and do you think? And look, I don't mean to judge. Okay, it's just people are going to wonder. It's one the NBA has a long history, long history, a lot of money put into it, and a lot of commitment. Now, putting up a super league such as EASL, that's going to take a lot of logistics, a lot of money, and I mean, sad to say, politics as well, because you're going international.
Sure. So, I mean, some of the key things to remember is that we already have a track record. So we started in 2017 with an invitational tournament of 8 teams called the Super 8 in Macau. And that was China, Japan, Korea, Taiwan. In 2018, we expanded and did 2 preseason events. And that was the first time that we worked with PBA teams. And then when in 2019, we had another preseason event. And from our events from 2017, we had 21 million viewers for that first event. And our last event, which featured Blackwater, TNT, and San Miguel, we had 117 million viewers. So the viewers and the fans love our product. Right now on all social media product platforms combined, we have 685 1,000 followers, many of those from the Philippines, and we're expanding that growth as we go into our season 1 in October 2021. What we've been doing this year or the past year in 2020 is we did an exclusive deal with FIBA, the global regulator of basketball, for 10 plus 5 years, which allows for us to have exclusivity over this concept. And that means that we are the only company that's allowed to open up this type of a Champions League concept in the region with FIBA's support. So it's FIBA sanctioned, and we've also are in the process of finalizing long-term deals with all of the leagues in the ecosystem as well.
Okay, now, given the reality of COVID, the pandemic, I mean, I have no doubt, Matt, that your idea, your concept, your business model is great. I get excited just talking about it, but you know, pandemic, COVID-19, it's just a bucket of cold water on a really hot idea. How are you going to deal with it?
Well, I mean, like this year, what we did was, or I should say 2020, what we did was we were going to have our last preseason event. So right now we've been operating these preseason events, and in October this year, we're going to the home and away model where the teams in the group stage go to the other group stage teams' home courts and battle it out. And of course, in the Philippines, we'll be hosting games for those home games. But we axed our last preseason event in 2020, and we decided in about March that, like, look, this is going to be a weird year. We got to plan for something different. So what we did was just start to build a whole arsenal of original content, where we were telling the stories of the players, what they were doing during their respective lockdowns, going into their training regimens, letting really give fans a behind the scenes look at players and their whole experiences. And we went and built our brand that way, through building our own original content series, which at this point now we're receiving over 40 million reach and 6 million engagements on an average month. So yeah, I just see the screen is on our Jared Dillinger show right now. And so Jared Dillinger, his cam, which is basically a vlog that shows a first person view of him, is one of our many offerings, and it's immensely popular. I mean, each of these episodes is getting over 1 million views and a ton of engagement. And we've organically grown that follower base of all of our digital content. We haven't paid for any fans or done anything like that. So we've really tried to be innovative with telling basketball stories, both of the athletes, the teams, the leagues, and during this period when there's been a lack of traditional basketball content. And what we're doing is really trying to get people excited and fans excited around the region once the gates open and we're allowed to have arenas packed with fans again in the future. COVID has been a huge bummer, though. You're absolutely correct.
So a number of leagues have been really desperate, so much so that they've risked bubble tournaments, because they said we either play or we die, because a lot of the leagues don't want their momentum to fade, and then a lot of players are suffering because they can't compete. And he said they say, yeah, we can work out for all we want, but being competitive requires being on the court. Do you see the Super League coming up this year and just basically resorting to bubbles?
Look, so I'm very confident in the proliferation of this vaccine, and I know that was what your previous segment was about. And I think that the world is extremely anxious to open up, like international commerce, travel, tourism as an industry. It needs to open up. So I don't think we would be able to make a judgment call to say, like, things aren't going to work out this year at any point before the third quarter of this year. So we really are counting on this vaccine. But East Asia Super League, given that it is a home and away model and it plays in the different international markets, it requires international travel to be normalized. So if for some reason it wasn't normalized, we would just delay our start for one more year. There's no way we can do a bubble, and it's just not feasible. You can't have professional athletes sitting in a room for 2 weeks and jeopardizing their conditioning. You'd have injuries all over the place, and we would be the biggest enemy of all of our partner leagues faster than you can imagine.
Okay. What about the owners, the teams? Because when you form this sort of super leagues, you have all of this exposure. Then agents, scouts, spotters start seeing talents from other teams, and there's the risk of players being pirated. Is there an agreement among participants that, guys, we'll join in, we'll all be part of the Super League, but we all sign on the dotted line, no scalping, no pirating of players?
I think like for operators of a league, like we want to be a platform where the players are able to like expand their own brand like we have done through our original content, but we're not involved in like the business matters of the players. And there needs to be a separation from a conflict of interest perspective for a league and with its players. So I think from a basketball perspective, free market movement of players to a certain degree is healthy, but if it becomes something poaching and wealthier leagues or wealthier teams are victimizing smaller players, then that's a situation that needs to be dealt with. And so far, since we have operated 4 successful major scale preseason events, we haven't seen anything like that so far. What we have seen is like players from different leagues going to the other Asian leagues because of the exposure received, but haven't seen it in sort of a way that would be ugly or anything. But look, we have a very solid governance structure together with FIBA. Our advisory board is composed of members of the various leagues. So we have platforms for dealing with those issues in an expedient manner and an effective manner as well.
Okay, you mentioned conflict of interest. What about conflict of schedules? How do you work out schedules of teams and leagues from so many countries on different latitudes of the globe? The weather, the schedules. How do you work it out?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that is probably the most challenging part of everything right now. We are set, I would say, in 80-90% of these types of discussions for scheduling. I mean, there's still some outstanding items. Since it is a very diverse tapestry of, when you look at Greater China, Japan, Korea, and put together with the Philippines, you're going all the way. We have considerations like, for example, the Beijing Olympics in 2022, or other types of international sporting events, and we have FIBA's schedule with the windows which Gilas plays in and whatnot, and we have to be mindful of all of that. So actually the schedule for our first season, beginning in October 2021, ending in February 2022, was determined almost a year ago. So, I mean, it's just about a very long planning cycle, and then fine tuning it, and small adjustments can be made along the way, assuming everyone is acting in good faith. And since this is good for all of the leagues and teams, we generally find people are pretty congenial about making adjustments.
Okay, Matt, last question. What about monopolies? Because, it happens in many commercial leagues. The most superior team monopolizes the championships, and after a while, I mean, like the Lakers and even here in the Philippines, how are you worried that after a while a certain commercial team will monopolize the championships?
Well, this is part of our model. which is that we do not want to take anything from the domestic leagues. Like if you look at EuroLeague, it's kind of a structure where they have permanent memberships, and it really just gravitates towards the most powerful teams in the leagues. But for us, like we have a business agreement with each of our member leagues, which gives them a revenue share and or a minimum revenue guarantee on an annual basis. And for us, like to support the league and its holistic development, including youth development, grassroots training, coach training, etc. Those are all like things that we encourage, and as we go along, we'll be more hands-on and involving ourselves in. And so we do not want any monopolies. And if we have weak leagues where there's only a few strong teams, then we will end up being weakened as a product because our fan base and our support base will be narrowed. So egalitarianism among the way these leagues are operated is very important.
Okay, well, I'll have to end it at that, Matt, and I do hope that you said October 2021 to February 2022. That's the league's Asian Super League season. So East Asia Super League season. I do hope that it does take place and that you have a successful season. Good day. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Cito. It's a pleasure. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Okay, that's Matt Beyer, of the CEO of the East Asia Super League, and it's going to be interesting. Parang magiging commercial Asian Games in basketball, where you see all the top players, all the top teams, because generally it's the commercial teams that are at the top of the bracket when it comes to basketball. So it's going to be exciting if it happens, and I guess we can actually hope for that and look forward to that, because if the vaccines start rolling out, even here in the Philippines by May, syempre, bago pa lang magliga doon nabakunahan na yung mga players natin. So, ang tanong lang, gaano karaming bakuna ang kailangan mo para kay Kraken? Okay, that's all for us here on Agenda. Please stay safe this weekend. It's out there. The enemy is out there, not just the COVID, but the spiritual enemy. Stay safe, keep praying, keep yourself protected, also medically, and enjoy life. Do enjoy life no matter what the circumstance. It's a choice. I choose to be happy. God bless all of you. Have a great day.